backlog de patentes do INPI constitui há anos uma das maiores reclamações dos seus usuários. Se compreende que o imenso atraso no exame de patente decorre principalmente do fato de que é pequeno o número de examinadores de patentes de nosso Instituto Nacional quando tomamos em conta o número total de pedidos e comparamos a carga por examinador com a observada em entidades semelhantes de outros países. Nos últimos anos, o INPI enfrentou decididamente o problema. Aperfeiçoou sistemas, simplificou procedimentos, expandiu o PPH e aprofundou a cooperação internacional. Solicitou dos examinadores uma produtividade maior no que foi atendido. O INPI valeu-se da experiência já consolidada com o trabalho em casa e pôde manter elevada a produtividade durante a pandemia. Além disso, as filas prioritárias contribuíram para a minimização do impacto dos atrasos. Importante para a construção de uma economia circular, cumpre destacar o sucesso do Programa de Patentes Verdes, que acelerou o exame de tecnologias de impacto positivo sobre o meio ambiente e o clima. Assim, já se pode perceber a redução significativa no backlog de decisões de primeira instância em quase todos os campos tecnológicos. Alguns aspectos, contudo, seguem preocupando os usuários. Com o aumento do volume de decisões, era de se esperar que crescesse o número de pedidos de revisão administrativa das decisões. Emergiu, de fato, uma maior preocupação com os pedidos de revisão das decisões de primeira instância, que poderão demorar para serem apreciados. Os resultados positivos e as apreensões são visíveis. Para melhor conhecê-los e compreendermos seus desdobramentos, montamos esse painel.
Bom dia a todos. Obrigada pela presença.
Good morning. Thank you for being here with us. This is panel 1 of the 41st ABPI Congress. My name is Gabriela Salerno. I am one of the biotechnology studies coordinator of ABPI and a partner of the Multi-Pimenta Lawyer's Office. I am responsible for the patent team in the office. We will deal on the updates about the patent backlog elimination plan. Now we have the presence of prominent professionals in the field of patent. We will be able to discuss this from different perspectives: the academia, INPI, the industry, and lawyers' offices. The project for fighting backlog was started in August 2019, therefore 2 years ago, with the challenge of examining 80% of the patent requests. Many things happened since then. We have the pandemic, and now we will have Liane Lage to show us the result of this project. She's a chemical engineer from the Minas Gerais University. She has a master's and PhD. She was a researcher in chemistry, and she is a regular employee of INPI, and she's been appointed head of the chemical division and patent coordinator, and has been working with computer programs too. I would like to explain that you can post your questions on the chat box and we will answer them in the end. Without any further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Liane. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you, ABPI, for this invitation. I am very honored to speak on behalf of ABPI. I think that it is a landmark in intellectual property in Brazil, and to be here talking about the problems and achievements of INPI is always favorable to the growth of the system in the country. I am going to present to you a little PowerPoint. But first, I'd like to say that we will speak about the plan for clearing the patent backlog, which first started in 2019, as was said. We expected at first resolving 80% of problems in a 2-year period. we made many projections, and in those projections, we extrapolated possibilities for filing. And this project started on August the 1st, 2019. But in fact, the results started to show in November. So we had expected to complete the project in July 2021, but we noticed that it would not be possible, and we needed to wait until the end of the year because of these responses, which only started to take place in November 2019. So I'm going to present to you what we lived through weekly at every Gazette publication. We have a master indicator of the plan, and I just want to be sure that we're going to share this with everyone. What I need to show you is this movement, which is a weekly one. And I'm going to do this twice so that you can understand each of these movements as I call them.
Eu espero que vocês tenham sentido essas vibrações.
I hope you have felt these vibrations, which is what we do at every meeting and discussion to try and understand what we need to do, what is the new movement we have to take forward. But now, 2 years later, we have already done 67%, as opposed to the expectation of many people who believed that ABPI would not be able to do it. So there was this great movement in the institution. The examiners were very committed, the administrative personnel too, and all of the ABPI employees in all areas. And what we see here was the first backlog meter and the backlog, and what it means, which is what I showed in the film, is to eliminate backlog. Many of them went to archive definitively. So the change into the change of this red into green. So there's still 13% missing to achieve the 80%, and we will achieve this. And we are fighting hard for that because we now have these 54,243 filings. Examiners are making an effort in order to comply with the expectation so that we can reach the 80%.
Nós temos alguma coisa que está, número de 950 que ainda está na Anvisa e que precisa.
So we still have these 950, and we have those who were deposited up to 2016. There are some requests, some filings that have to be dealt with administratively. And we have had the support of associations of ABPI, ABPI, and all of the intellectual property societies in Brazil. But we still have to work very hard in order to achieve these 80%. And so that you can understand the differences and the technology differences, we're going to drill down into this yellow number, 42,929 requests. We will see how we're going to get to these 80%. That number is broken down into areas. So we have 4 general coordinative offices, which are technology areas. We have chemicals, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, that includes foodstuff, medical. We have the field of electronics, and we can see the number of findings in this area, which is what we call CGPAT 3. And there's an area related to packaging, metallurgy, mechanics, human needs, and utility models. This chart takes these 42,929 requests and breaks them down into years. And you can see that although we don't have the single paragraph of Article 40, which we have always tried to resolve, we had difficulties regarding incomplete requests and digitalization problems. But what you can see in this chart, we still have very old requests. Here we have 2 filings of 2012, which are already in yellow. So the image has already been created, the digital image, and it's going to follow its process. Now in red, in the backlog meter, we still have very old findings that we want to recover. But what we can see, and we're going to drill down into the areas, that the greatest backlog is already the last few years. 2015, 2016 has the greatest concentration. If we look on a per area basis, we have here chemicals and pharmaceuticals, and we can see the differences of the load in each technological area.
Significa que ela já está realmente
polymers is very much concentrated over the past few years. So the backlog is already very advanced. And textile still has some older requests. Textile is also advancing. And we think that we have to advance a lot. The technology differences depend not only on the complexity of the matter, but also the number of, of examiners per area. The work we have to perform is to assign a certain number of examiners to each area so that we can advance in a single way. So if we look at the coordination offices for biotechnology, foodstuffs and so on, there's a very marked difference. There is a big concentration of requests being examined in bio or molecular biology, for instance, and plants and foodstuffs, but cosmetics all being examined. In agricultural machinery, we are getting there as we are in agricultural chemistry. So we have two major areas here in comparison to other two. So if we look at CGPAT 3, where there was the greatest concentration of requests, this is an area that is divided between electronics, telecommunications, civil engineering, electricity, physics, and oil. For instance, physics and oil, although this chart still shows an accumulation of findings, we can explain that the oil area is reaching the final stages of its plan. Civil also, but we have telecommunications and electrical and electronics still has a big load of findings. So if we look at CGPAT 4, we can see that that we are getting close to the end in utility models, also in packaging. Human needs is a bit more concentrated, and mechanics, there's still many requests. We hardly have any requests that were according to the single paragraph of Article 40. So regardless of the existence of a paragraph 40, it's we can see the different technologies will allow us to get close to these 80% globally. The 80% backlog reduction will be for the whole set. The overall number of findings that were in red and now are being turned into green. And we're going to get close to 80% to almost all areas.
Dos 80% que nós precisamos chegar ao backlog, nós temos uma meta de examinar.
Besides these 80% backlog elimination, we also have this request of doing it during 2 years. This is our major objective. As I could show you, not all of these areas will be able to reach this goal quite so immediately, but it should also be remembered that we count on the cooperation of examiners, not only in terms of improvement of productivity, but the examiners who are eliminating backlog are now starting to help with other technology areas by doing examination in technologies that they feel relatively at ease to working with. But as I said,
balanço de examinadores por carga tecnológica, às vezes, como na CGPAT 3, por diversidades da tecnologia, onde você precisa de examinadores muito...
Sometimes you need a very well-prepared examiners prepared for specific technologies, and we will not be able to arrive where we want at the speed we wanted, but we keep an eye on the first examination time. This goal, in order to be reached, we need to start examining requests in the post-backlog phase. And for those divisions who have already moved onwards, we already have
que é de
what we
exigência
called resource 6.23, which is a preliminary request that builds on other searches. So we are using the knowledge accumulated in this backlog fighting project to try and decrease the examination time, and by so doing to increase productivity. So we have already started this project with the requests for 2017, and a request deposited or filed in the beginning of 2017, considering the 36 months for the start of the examination can be started in January 2020, lasting until January 23. So we want to reach this goal, this other indicator, which is the carrying out of the examination up to 2 years of the filing. And I am not talking about priority requests that we are looking into in a period of less than 12 months. So building on previous searches have already started in 2017 for some divisions. As I said, some of them are already prepared for the post-log phase to start to think of that period, although our examiners are working, helping out those technology areas which are a little bit more behind. So cosmetics, metallurgy, all of those are in a final phase of the backlog fighting plan. And there is a division which has already completed the backlog fighting plan. And although they're helping out other technologies, they have already started the requests for 2017. So step by step, we are working with the past and aiming at the future. And in this regard, it is important to remember of Axis 2 of the backlog fighting plan. I've always said that the plan is divided in 2 phases. One, which is winning over the past, and the other one thinking about the future. The post-backlog plan brings us to a reality of new technologies, and we have expanded access to all of the databases, although we are enabling searches now, and examiners have constantly been trained for the post-log era, when we will not have 100% of previous such use. We're improving quality, and this by means of the PCT, and this project has already started to be implemented. And and constant training, and here we count on the European office with the cooperation agreement we have with them, and we count on you, the industry, and we are moving to another level, and we have to work together in order to change ABPI into a efficient agency as we always wanted. And in a complementation of new examiners, especially for the areas we mentioned here, we have a pilot project which is already in a reporting phase. We have completed this pilot project. We are examining it, and we will have results to be communicated soon. And we also have an ongoing project, which is for assessing the number of examiners for each technology, for the sizing, the number of employees. So we are working, and the message I want to convey to you is that we need to believe in INPI. We need to work together, as ABPI has done and several associations have done. And we also count on our users to improve training in technologies for our examiners. This is what I wanted to share with you. And I hope that you have managed to understand what our situation is. I'd like to thank ABPI once again. And I greet Luis Edgar, and I'd like to compliment them for his management of ABPI and our partnership in this period. And I have to pay homage to our workers, our civil servants who unfortunately left us during this pandemic.
Obrigada, Liane. Foi uma excelente.
Thank you for your excellent presentation, which illustrated the current situation very clear, as always. I would like to thank you. And let me tell you again that questions can be submitted in the chat. Let me now give the floor to Maria Isabel. She has a degree in law, has a graduate degree in civil process, and has worked in law firms in the area of corporate pharmaceutical industry. And she's responsible for a patent before she joined the pharmaceutical area, where she's responsible for the patent area. Sorry. Thank you, Gabriela. It is a great pleasure to be here today. Let me thank you for your invitation. I'm annually present at the seminar, but first time I am here talking to Liane, Nadia. Although we are still in virtual mode, it is a great pleasure to be here in this panel. And I would like to show a few slides. They are not as good as the slides that Liane is presented. My slides are homemade. They could have been done by my 10-year-old daughter. I don't have that skill. It is just an outline for our discussion. Can you all watch? Can you all see the slides? When I was first invited to come here, it came to my mind, well, we are still going to be talking about backlog. We are tired of that. The backlog has been with us for so many years, and no one can deny that the situation is different at INPI. So I was thinking, what can someone, as a user of the system, what could be brought to discussion? How do I see the situation today? When we think about the backlog and the plan that has been presented by Liane, we may jump to the conclusion that, well, everything is being solved. That's true, but there are still situations that we have to deal with. And so my comments will be based on that. How do we feel that situation? Has the issue been really overcome and well managed from the perspective of the user, of course? What are the current challenges? What are the proposals for solution? Eliane has mentioned some of them, and final considerations so that we can engage in a debate afterwards. I don't think I will take the full time that has been assigned to me, and I'm doing that on purpose so that we have some time for questions and answers. Let's consider the backlog issue. Of course, this is something that comes from the past, but is being addressed currently. The numbers that have been presented by Liane show us that in the future, that in coming years, this topic will not be an issue. We won't have a panel devoted to it in a Congress. We will get to a point in which discussions will be in the past and the consequences of backlog will also be in the past, but we haven't reached this point. So what happens today, in spite of the fact that we are experiencing a different reality in terms of the time that we have to wait for the granting of the patent, we still have a legacy that impacts this, and this legacy is the backlog. One of the main topics this year when we discuss patents is the decision that has been handed down as a result of an inconstitutionality act dealing with the patent term. This has been discussed widely in Brazil, but since there are people who are not acquainted with this discussion, I will put it in a few words. This is something that started in the past when backlog was a reality, and this decision was reached today by the Supreme Court during the pandemic. What was the minimum term? And this is just for our colleagues from abroad, because Brazilians have gone through that and have experienced all the problems related to it. The terms of patents in Brazil were regulated in two aspects. Should the patent be granted? Well, the patent was filed and it was granted within the first 10 years after filing. The term would be 20 years as from the date of filing, as it is done all over the world. But due to the fact that there was a backlog, and let me remind you that this backlog no longer exists as such. This would not be the case today. But there was a backlog, there was a delay. So there was an exception which stated that if the patent was granted within this 10-year period, there would be an additional period. So this was the topic that was discussed in terms of this patent term. And that was the decision that was handed down by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has decided that this was not constitutional. So the term for patents in Brazil will be the same, which is effective in other countries, 20 years as from the date of filing. So as from now, that's what is going to be effective. However, the Supreme Court introduced an exception for pharmaceutical patents. Today we heard Mr. Amorim opening this Congress. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to listen to his presentation. Mr. Amorim is an economist in Brazil. He talks about many topics. And there was one moment in which he quoted someone who sent him a Twitter. And this sentence summarizes our feeling vis-a-vis the decision handed down by the Supreme Court. And he said the following: you are playing basket, you are alone, and you are ready to score because you're going to throw in the basket. And then the judge says, well, let's switch now. It's no longer basketball, it's soccer, football, and you are touching the ball. So basically, this is an illustration for the fact that the rules have been changed while the game was in progress. So this decision was retroactive. In a scenario that was a well-known scenario, there was a change introduced, and this change had many consequences. This decision of the Supreme Court affected all patents in Brazil, so we have to be aware of all aspects in all industries. The pharmaceutical industry was certainly caught in this retroactive issue, and all the business plans that were based on that 10-year rule had to be reorganized. But this is also true for business plans for other industries. Therefore, a company that has an electronic mechanism or in the agribusiness area, they were relying on the minimum 10-year term, even if the request had not been responded yet. So they engaged in partnerships, and there are licenses. And we have our universities too. And I think in this panel, we are going to have someone talking about that. Major holders of patent that file for a patent today, they come from the academic field. Therefore, when a law is amended, when the law is changed, and we know that any country can introduce a change in the legislation, this is part of the game. As from that decision, adjustments will have to be made, or a decision that is handed down, and everything changes from that date onwards. But when there is a change, while, as we said, the game is in progress, is more difficult. Most companies work today in terms of open innovation. The academic sector work with the private sector. There are partnerships, and the partnerships were affected because there was an expectation of benefiting from a protection for a determined period of time. And this has been affected. When we talk about a minimum term, we have to consider another aspect, which is the portfolio management. All users were affected. Whether the decision was positive or negative, I'm not here to judge. It came from our higher court, but these are aspects that introduce complexity in our work. We have to explain that to our head offices outside Brazil, and this brings difficulties. The whole industry was affected, pharmaceutical industries in particularly, and retroactively, so our past was also impacted. But what is our major concern? The legal insecurity that this decision has introduced. If we had a patent granted by the national agency, which was responsible for that and for determining the term, if the term is changed, inevitably we introduce in our country the feared lack of foreseeability. So this lack of foreseeability, not knowing what's going to happen in the future. And when you are in an industry that is competing for resources, this is all valuable in terms of the final decision. So it is not a direct topic of our discussion, but it is very timely because it happened in June, and companies are reorganizing themselves, whether from now on or in other sectors, in all sectors, and the pharmaceutical sector as well. But I would like to remind that we have an impact in research, in the academy, and innovation. When rules are not clear, the investment is impacted. What are the challenges? That we see in terms of the user and within the agency. All topics have been covered by that video, and some have been discussed and addressed by Liane. But this is what we see today. We have impacts on the INPI plan. Why? Because efforts had to be undertaken to adjust to this new reality. Since July, we have had new requests in terms of the holders of a patent, and this takes time from the examiner. Since the decision contemplates an issue of being retroactive, some holders of patent understand that they do not have a pharmaceutical patent. And this is all within INPI, and it is exactly these examiners who are there working, trying and successfully handle backlog. Another challenge that we identify at INPI is not related to this decision, but has been mentioned, which is the amount of administration resources that certainly are increasing due to the effectiveness in the first level. So since these new demands are going to be analyzed by the same examiners, we understand that this may have an impact on the plan and have to be addressed. These are challenges. I've mentioned many times that the backlog is a problem of the past, but there are repercussions in the present, and the agency has to be ready to face them. Having said that, the question is, what is the permanent solution? We are not here to present a solution, but we have inputs. Once INPI is sufficiently strong, updated, and with modern resources, when INPI will no longer be fighting to respond to competing demands, it will be a different situation. The agency has evolved significantly, partnerships with other agencies, the fight against backlog, the remote work, this is all very positive and has placed INPI in a situation that is very different from what we saw 5 years ago. The users still have some concerns, but they are dealing with a more agile institutions that can rely on many more tools than it had in the past. And going back to what Liane said, we from the industry, from the academic field, we can support this agency. No sector can be interested in an outdated INPI. Pharmaceutical industry that is filing for patents, international industries, other sectors, other industries, we all need a strong agency, because the possibility to deal with future scenarios is what we all need. And Liane mentioned that, and I repeat that there is a request to bring training in terms of new technologies. We've been doing that jointly. We are supporting and pushing for training in these new technologies. Recently, a letter was published, signed by many associations, Interpharma, ABPI, CNI. Actually, there was a moment in which civil society came together supporting INPI, because INPI, in spite of the efforts undertaken, the agency still has limited resources, and solutions will only come from a strengthened agency that would be able to have financial independence. This is a much more complex discussion, but we have to insist on that. We have to go back to this point. We have to present our request to the ministry, which is something that has been done, is being done, but this is a decision of what type of country we want. My final considerations are in the sense that the current status of INPI is certainly much better for the user, a lot more than it was just a few years ago. So being more agile, the plan that was presented here, this is all working positively. Of course, there has to be the follow-up. Liane is already talking about the future, which is essential because the existing plan cannot be restricted to the present. It has to contemplate whatever comes in the future. But the plan is doing that. We have to trust the decisions. Once we have so many requests, we have to rest assured that if a decision is reached, that decision will be kept. That's the only way in which an innovation environment, and INPI is related to this environment. That's the only reason for INPI. So this environment of innovation will have to flourish. INPI will strengthen the patent arena in Brazil, creating the conditions so that the country can be chosen as a destination for patents with all the protection and benefits given by a patent, so that innovators can invest and can bring new innovations to this country. We desperately need innovation. We are a very large country, but we are lagging behind in innovation, and not only lagging behind, but we are stepping backwards. The scenario is better than it was in the past, but we should never just settle for what we have. The perspective, as mentioned by Liane, is positive, and I hope that in coming years, when we gather here in this Congress, we should not have a panel devoted to backlog, or if we do, we'll only be talking about the future perspectives and not the impact of the past. Thank you so much, and I'm ready for the discussion afterwards. Thank you, Maria Isabel. Brilliant presentation. And you brought a very important point.
I enjoyed this very much. You already gave us food for the discussion, and now we will listen to Nadia Oliveira, who is from the Campina Grande University. She is the technical director of the Paraíba Technology Complex. And she has graduate studies from a university in Spain. It is a great pleasure to speak to you. I'd like to thank ABPI for this invitation. On behalf of everybody at ABPI, Luis Edgar, I think that this is an extremely important meeting. I think that this is a panel where the three of us will complement each other. I think that the pandemic showed us very obviously the importance of having a country that is strengthened in innovation terms. It is not a systematic move of running after registrations. It's a country that is valued by the production of knowledge it creates. So any kind of initiatives from other agencies are very important so that we can make Brazil think in a positive way and be optimistic about the future. I think that the pandemic accelerated what we were going to live through by 10 years. So we have made breakthroughs in very many areas and in intellectual property also. I'd like my presentation to be shared on the screen, if I may, please. So right now, I will speak about the role of academia. Liane presented the diagnosis of the backlog process and what ANPI has done. And I will explain why, Professor Nadia, why the Paraíba Technology Complex and University are here. First of all, I'd like to say that I think that all agencies, government and non-governmental agencies, have to take up their responsibility over this process. So as institutions, and we have been one of the first technology complexes in Brazil since 1984. So we took up this responsibility 3 years ago when we signed a technical and scientific agreement with the ANPI. And we created a regional office of ANPI in our complex so that we could help out ANPI in this digital transformation process in various areas, including backlog. So we made ourselves available. And Campina Grande is a large city. We are acknowledged for our qualification in information technology. We have universities, we have the technology complex. We breathe university. We are a university city, which in intellectual property have threaded along a very successful pathway. I am a graduate university professor, and we are working with SEBRAE, with the innovation agencies, and teaching what we produce in university can create intellectual property and GDP for a state and country. So this was our first notion of disruption. The importance of intellectual property consolidated in an environment of research and innovation. So in Campina Grande, we made a commitment with that, and I'm going to show some of the steps we've taken to help not just ANPI, but our country and our universities to have effective participation. We have to move out of a position where we only criticize. We need to gather to solve problems. So there are only two sides to a coin, the solution or the problem. You're on one or the other. And here in Paraíba, over the past 3 years with a formalized contract, we have this commitment of showing ANPI solutions. We work with internationalization of university startups, scientific cooperation, technology, and knowledge transfer, and always working very closely with the academia, with innovation agencies and program coordinators, and we play a fundamental role. As a university, we also have to help INPI in this process by qualifying people who can be examiners for INPI in the future. We need to strengthen the INPI Academy. We need to cooperate. We need to qualify people in various areas, and universities have changed this mindset that we qualified people would write writers and researchers, but not examiners. So they have our students in publishing their work need to first ask for a registration. So we have to perform this culture disruption. And we have relentlessly tried to disseminate this culture with our successful cases in Paraíba and all over the country. And we have not measured efforts in cooperation with the government, with the production industry. We are not shy at all. Often people think that if you work in academia, you cannot work with the productive industry. This is not true with us. I work with my students together with the industry. Students are completing their PhD dissertation and they open up startups in a partnership with the production system. So research and science need to be close to the production industry. This became very clear with the pandemic. Not doing otherwise is a mistake, and we are lagging behind. The responses that we produce in academia are not changed into products and concrete solutions for our country. Do we not have researchers that can develop vaccines? Of course we do, but the pharma industry and intellectual property has to be implemented and working at the same time in a technological scale. So I think that eliminating backlog is a much deeper issue than numbers and seeking examiners. We have to do that, but we also have to change the mindset in our country so that we can progress in this direction. I'm happy that we are here. We have nothing to be shy about. I think that the production industry, universities, and the government have to work in cooperation. Backlog is not just a INPI problem. It's a problem of all of us Brazilians, and we have to take up this co-responsibility and not just blame one agency that renders services with all of its resources. I'm going to show you a solution that we developed together with INPI, and we are very happy about this. And there is no reason why universities should not make this contribution. We cannot take the ICT sector in INPI and as academia, why will we not feel co-responsible for presenting solutions to eliminate the backlog as an innovation ecosystem in Paraíba and as a technology complex? We do feel co-responsible and we do make ourselves available. And so we are happy to take up this responsibility. Because we work with patents in our two federal universities, and the state university are amongst the 40 greatest patent requesters in Brazil. So we feel even more responsible because we are amongst the first agencies ranked in number of patent requests with INPI. Here we have some concrete examples that we do not shy out. This is a 3D prosthesis printed by one of our alumnus, and we are having meetings with the productive sector and the academia so that we can turn this into a product and it can turn into income and GDP. We also make all of the efforts possible in making cooperations we have with the technology ministry, with INPI, with the health ministry. And whenever the country needs, and whenever this area needs innovation and research, we feel responsible and willing to help. So I'm going to show you this video, which is one of our concrete actions. And I'm very happy to show this to you. We have developed and helped INPI to develop this platform, which is the INPI Open Shopping Mall. And we are going to do this with the Ministry of Finance, and we're already designing a solution with artificial intelligence, with fourth industrial revolution for the backlog area. The universities of Paraíba are going to help out INPI to develop a digital tool that is intelligent with good usability so that we can set off this backlog. This is just an example of what you can do in a partnership. So the video we're going to show you now is a bit of a taste of this INPI window that was built together in cooperation. And I am sure that we are going to do something as good as, or even better than this for eliminating backlog. May we show the video, please? Here in Paraíba, we are very happy with the result of this initiative of this IP platform. The IP window is a platform with very cool usability. It is a platform that will help the digital transformation process. First of all, we sort of creating phases where every IP article would be launched every year. For instance, in 2020, we launched a patent window. This year, another one until the last one. The digital window was a challenge that was launched here in Paraíba, and we have devoted ourselves to this, and we have used the best software engineering practices in order to assure quality for the product that is being created. The expansion and remodeling of the IP product materializes a partnership which has been very successful, which is the technical cooperation agreement signed between INPI and the Paraíba Technological Complex. And based on this way of working together with greater interface between INPI and the main players in the country, we will be able to offer Brazilian society a platform that will allow for the effective possibility of making intellectual transactions. The technology park has this mission of developing. This is part of our topic, software development and validation, and the use of these tools together with INPI. We have got together. Thanks to the partnership that we are signing with the Technology Park, we have made big strides in this process. So the INPI window was launched last year, was quite restricted and accepted very little information based in a patent document. This year, we hope that by September, we can launch an IP window with all of the industrial property items, and other kinds of information will be accepted to be posted, and also expanding the IP goods. I mean, the type of information, and we are planning phase 3 together with the technology complex so that this can be expanded and so that this can become a major intellectual property shopping mall. Paraíba is a state of winners in patents. Our 2 universities are ranked first and second in the patent requests in 2019. This makes us become even more responsible for delivering technological solutions with this partner of ours, the INPI. I'm afraid the sound is a bit poor. The interpreters apologize. Financial products for innovation, regulatory products. Regarding regulation, people who request information may also place their requests in this big mall, intellectual mall that we are going to create. So we are stimulating companies to be entrepreneurs in this country with tools that allow for content management and facilitating the development of business at a national and international scale. I believe that this example made it very clear. When we make a concrete presentation like this, we can show that it is possible to do this. We did this as who we are, academia and technology complex, and we have developed a platform and piece of software that will help INPI in offering its assets. And we want to help with so many other solutions for INPI with this digital transformation, and with universities and the technology park complex, we want to provide this to INPI. We are available, and what I wanted was to show this vision of the academia in our state. And we have tried to help our country, our economy, and knowledge transfer, making ourselves co-responsible. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you. Please do visit our ecosystem by going into our webpage and those of our universities on social media. And now that we having improvements in the pandemic, if you want to come to Paraíba, we will be there with open arms. Thank you very much, Nadia. This has been an excellent presentation. You've been so emphatic and calling upon all of the actors in this innovation process to work together. This is very important. I'd like to stress this and also to congratulate you for this project with ABPI, which is so interesting. We will want to hear more about this, of course. So I was told that we do not have the chat on, at least for speakers, for myself and for Anna, because that was causing instability in the transmission. But I have been able to read at least one question. But first, I'm going to give the floor to Ana Cristina Miller, who is a chemical engineer. She's also a co-coordinator of the Patent Commission of ABPI, partner of the Barbosa Musnick Aragon Lawyer's Office. Good morning, Anna. You also have some time to make a presentation. I refrained from making more comments. I thought the presentations were wonderful with different perspectives, but all of them arriving at the same common point. So should we have time, I will move to the question and answer period.
Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you all who supported us and all those who allowed this event to take place. Also, my colleagues in this panel. I'm very happy to be here in this all-female panel, incredible women who are here with me. I was very happy to hear each one of you because each one of you brought an important contribution. And I'm going to be brief in my considerations so that we have more time for questions. But I would like to make just brief comments, notes that I wrote as I was listening to you. So Liane, who was showing us the evolution in terms of the background, and I could see how happy she was to be able to show a graph that had a positive result. I was a civil servant before I joined a law firm. I was in the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, and we know very well the difficulties that permeate the work of civil servants. There are many challenges. And when we look at what we had in 2019, and I'm thinking about the ABPI and where we stand today and how little we have to go to reach the 13% goal. So to reach the level of 80%, we still have to progress 13%. And I could see that you are proud and you have reasons to be proud because this was the result of joint effort of many people who were working for that. And we, as users of the system, we are there supporting and showing that empathy because we want this to work. We want the protection system to strengthen so that everything that we generate here can be protected. Brazil is a creative country, but we have to move forward. And when I look back and when I think about the time when I first joined the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, I went from the university to this foundation, and I was hearing discussions. This is 1995, 96. And some of these topics are still being discussed. And of course, we feel frustrated. As user, I'm not talking about ANPI, I'm just talking in general, how you can be frustrated. Certain working groups are being recreated, which is good, but we want continuity. One of these groups is called GP. I remember in the past, we were discussing the Budapest Treaty. We wanted Brazil to be a signatory of this treaty, and therefore, if should Brazil do so, we would be receiving biological material. This was an enormous effort, and Margarita was the head of this area, and that shows you how old I am. But we are back discussing the same topics, and we cannot allow discussions not to come to an end, not to lead to a solution, because otherwise it will be very tiresome in the sense that we waste time and we waste efficiency. We have to be a selected group of people from the industry, from the government, and from the academic world working together and leading discussions to solution. We may not reach the most wonderful result, but we have to get to a solution. Otherwise, we do not progress. So I was very happy to hear Liane and the pride that I could show in her face. Certainly, there are reasons for that. I was moved because it came to my mind all the work that was involved. And as you yourself mentioned, there's still some progress ahead. And there's also when the other speaker said, well, you're still here discussing backlog. We have to come to closure. We have to put an end. And I think we are almost there, because it's only then that we will be able to examine the 2017 patent filings, so that never again we can talk about backlog. Let me remind you the bill of 2019 that refers to the financial and administrative independence of ANPI, which is crucial, so that the effort that has been done so far to reduce the backlog, so that this effort can go forward, cannot come to an end. We not only want to solve the backlog, but we want to move forward. We do not want the spending number of cases to come back. We want to attract investment. The more we are able to attract investments, more opportunities, work opportunities, opportunities to grow economically as a country. We are going to add value to our projects, and we are going to have, we are going to be in a position to grow, which we have not been able to do recently. We've seen a slight increase during the last year, but we also had stepped backwards, so we could be in a much better position. I would like to congratulate ANPI, and I do hope that the coming year will be an year in which we were able to move ahead. As a law firm, I want to emphasize our willingness to join in the work and insist in the idea that we have to bring more investments to Brazil. For this purpose, we need a strong ANPI. We want a sector, or we want to be in a position that we are not surprised by a changing rules as we go along. And Maria Isabel very appropriately mentioned that. Of course, we all knew that there was a discussion on paragraph or Article 40, but the fact that the decision included retroactivity certainly made an impact, as she mentioned, in the portfolio management and in the partnerships have been established. How are you going to settle all that? So these are factors that bring instability and end up giving the investor an impression that's not what we want. When the investor looks at the financial risk, investors are in a position to be the first one to develop the technology. Of course, they want to see a compensation. And if they see a not stable environment or environment in which there is a risk of instability, why would they invest here when they have opportunities elsewhere that will ensure a better return on investment and more legal security? So these aspects have to be considered before certain initiatives and actions are undertaken. And Maria Isabel explained perfectly this point. And Nadia mentioned the joint activity of the corporate sector, the government, and this is what we've been hoping to see succeeding. We have fantastic professionals. Many of our professionals have been included in the Stanford University ranking that identifies 2% of the most renowned researchers all over the world, and some of them were Brazilians. But sometimes we are unable to turn that invention into an innovation that will reach the market and will fulfill its final objective, which is to bring benefits, which is to bring opportunities for new investments and ultimately move forward. I think all these topics were addressed. And I also would like here to mention the national strategy of in terms of IP. I think this is very important. There is an issue in terms of updating the legal framework. There's a debate on that. We have to update our Industrial Property Act that has existed for over 20 years. Our law was a very forward-looking legislation. It still is, but it could be further improved. To be an entrepreneur in Brazil, and being an entrepreneur is one of the points in this strategy. But as we know, being an entrepreneur in Brazil is not easy. There are many obstacles. There are many challenges in terms of taxation, in terms of many areas. But I believe that we are resilient. I was watching the Olympic Games. Unfortunately, I could not hear Mr. Amorim earlier this morning. He's fantastic. But during the Olympic Games, he posted certain messages in terms of the perseverance of our athletes, the medals that we failed to achieve due to lack of investment. So we have to encourage new generations to be fully engaged in the sports or studies, because this will contribute to discipline, to giving them focus, and to giving them dreams that can be cherished, but that would give them a reason to work and move forward. This will only be possible with a sense of the collective environment. I cannot feel good and be in a positive position if I'm faced with someone who has no opportunities, who is not well, who is not benefiting from the same aspects in society. And this feeling has been made more clear due to the pandemic, and we should not allow it to be sent to the back of our minds. So Gabriela, I'd like to give you the floor and we are ready to listen to questions. Thank you, Juana. That was a great summary of the presentations. I'd like to thank you. I know that we have exceeded the time assigned to us, and unfortunately, the chat is not open so as to allow us to be able to read the questions. But I have this one question that I will entertain. This is a question to Liane. Unfortunately, we'll be restricted to this one question. And the question is, according to the numbers presented by Dr. Lage, the numbers in terms of electric and electronic sector, about 16,000, have a greater backlog. Is there any plan to deal with this existing backlog so that this doesn't turn into a major problem again? Sorry, my mic was mute. Before answering this question, let me tell you how great it was to hear Nadia. We've seen the future. It was a light shining at the end of this discussion. We've spent many years discussing the backlog, and I am, in fact, very proud of what we've done. It was not easy. It's not easy, and it certainly was achieved with a lot of effort from each one of our associates. And I have to be very proud. Each examiner, each civil servant that was giving their utmost in terms of contribution in an environment that is particularly difficult, which is now during the epidemic. And I was very happy to see what Nadia presented to us. It's an university that is opening its doors to innovation. And the words of a young professor, I'm very happy to see this future. Now, addressing Sylvia's question, all I can say is that we are doing all possible efforts within our scope to respond to that. We are working in terms of searchers, artificial intelligence as much as possible within certain areas. We are looking for alternatives in terms of outsourced searchers. It could be a response, but we depend on new examiners that have this specific technical expertise, an expertise that within our group, and considering the new technologies that are being developed at a very fast pace, we need these new examiners with this expertise, and we cannot operate this miracle. To look for this independence to help ABPI in terms of training and to present to the government this need for an open competitive examination so that we can hire new civil servants. That's what is very important. And this is my message to you. I see a good future. I see a different ABPI, but we will only be able to have solutions for certain areas if we have the possibility of hiring new people. In mechanic engineering, we don't have enough people. Many people have retired. So in certain areas, we see no solution unless we are able to bring on board new examiners. Thank you, Liane. Unfortunately, we'll have to conclude this panel once again. I would like to thank each one of you. And I'm happy to see that I'm saying each one of these ladies that are here and who have a position of leadership. They are all of you are working with innovation in one way or another. So I would like to thank each one of you for having accepted this invitation and for providing us with so much information and such interesting and informative presentations. So I would like to wish you a good afternoon. I hope you you are going to stay with us and for the upcoming panels, but I will conclude here unless there's any other comment. Congratulations to all of you and good afternoon. Thank you.